have any set price. If you want to give a donation, you can, but you don't have to give. So if this bill passes, if a same-sex marriage couple wants to use our facility, do we have the rights to say, are we protected to say, because of our religious belief, we want to deny that request? Are we able to do that?
I think, and just one quick follow-up question, Chair, with respect to, your First Amendment rights and freedom of speech. Is it your concern or contention that potentially,
yes,
maybe if I could just finish the question.
Oh, sorry.
That potentially, if the state sanctions thereby same-sex marriage, thereby making it an official state policy, that it sets up you potentially in your professional capacity a tension there between what you and your church may personally believe and now what is the official policy of the state.
Thank you for asking that question, because does that mean I have to change what I preach? Can I no longer speak against homosexuality or against what I believe in the scriptures? Will I get prosecuted for preaching that message or teaching our people, my family, my kids, that yes, on one hand, we accept and we show grace and mercy and love, even though many people may not feel that way, but that's, at the same time, stand for our truth and stand for what we believe is right. And will we get persecuted or prosecuted both and spend the rest of our time in litigation and prevent the church from doing its mission? So our resources will be robbed, and it will hinder our calling, our vocation, and everything. Why we do what we do as ministers in the church.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Ng.
Thank you, Pastor, for your very convicted testimony. I appreciate your description of aloha and where it comes from. I think it's a great discussion to open up in all this, and how you have concerns that people that aren't Hawaiian are coming in and giving their own notions of Hawaiian, of aloha. So I wanted to ask you, when do you think the practice and spirit of aloha was formed, and by who?
I really do believe it is from the Lord. I think that power cannot be manufactured by man. Even ho'oponopono, that's something that brings tremendous healing and reconciliation from family. So there's many things within our culture that I believe is just been given to us by God, or for ancient and for Io, if I may. That we have a responsibility to not only practice it, but to protect it as well.
Okay, so you're saying that aloha was around in Hawaii before missionary contact?
Yes, exactly.
And that aloha extended to homosexual couples, all types of people, all types of relationships.
Yes.
It wasn't until the missionaries came in where that definition of aloha kind of shifted. So now we have concerns that there's outside groups coming in and again shifting our definition of aloha. Do you see some inconsistency there?
Well, and it was a small minority group of people that came from outside of Hawaii. There were businessmen, and yes, they were missionaries, and they twisted and they messed things up for our people, for our nation, and our culture. So it did. In their days.
So before the missionaries came, I think you and I both agree that we should stick to that definition of aloha today, and that aloha extends to same-sex couples. It extends to a lot more than just heterosexual people.
Well, I think because I believe aloha is from the Lord, and aloha is Lord. Another aloha too, a way that we can extend that aloha to those who of the same-sex marriage in this case. That's why I say I think if we can expand the civil unions so that they can have their rights and benefits and breaks and federal benefits.
Okay, Chair, if I may, one more question.
Okay.
While maintaining righteousness.
Yes, so I understand that one way to expand aloha to same-sex couples is by preaching the Lord of God, and that's I mean the Word of God. That's your job, and but as a lawmaker, in order to extend aloha, in my point, and fairness, do you think that the gentleman that was here earlier who spoke as a gay Native Hawaiian, do you think that they should be afforded the same rights of marriage that you and I do as a straight Native Hawaiians?
That's a great question, a tough question, because the big picture is that all of this is coming from the outside, and it's overwhelmingly majority of saying people for thousands of generations, Hawaii has been based on a family system between a man and a woman, and to just change that is very difficult and challenging, and that's the best I can say.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mahalo for allowing us to stay in your office with Antiponi. So
Representative Follies have questions for the same testifier. Anybody else? Same guy.
Thank you, Pastor Kapihe, for being here today. Just have a few questions to kind of follow up with what the representative from Maui talked to you about. I grew up as a little kid in Tonga. I see we have a gentleman of Samoan ancestry behind you. I'm generally, I'm chop suey like many people over here. As far as your understanding of Hawaiian history, even pre-European contact, are you ever aware of a formalized celebration that was recognized by the entire group of people on an island or anywhere of members of the same sex as it was recognized between members of opposite sex couples in Hawaiian history?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with unions that were celebrated for purposes of posterity between members of the opposite sex couple prior to European contact?
Just say that in a more simpler way for me to understand.
Well, let's go back even a little further. Are you aware that David Malo, in his account of Hawaiian culture, identified that there was, prior to Wakea, there was marriage, well, marriage as we would understand it in English terms, between one man and one woman. Are you aware of that account by David Malo?
No, I'm not.
Okay. I'm using my background in the only island kingdom in the Pacific that was never colonized or occupied by a foreign power. That even pre-European contact, the concept of passing mana from one generation to the next only occurred between one man and one woman. Would you say that that is similar?
Yeah. Yes.
And that philosophy is found throughout the entire Pacific region?
I would say there's a large consistency of that.
Okay. Do you believe that all the Polynesian cousins of the Hawaiians, who are those nations who are now in control by indigenous people, their own people this day,
Yes.
do you believe that they are somehow falling into the right-wing
I'm part Tuvaluan and part Samoan too. So, out of the whole Pacific, it's only Hawaii that's being targeted to have same-sex marriage, and the feeling of just the imposition of a lifestyle and so forth.
Well, let's talk about our common connection there with Samoa. We probably understand that the Pacific Islands have a longer history with the gay community than the United States has been a country.
Yeah.
Would you say that statement is accurate?
Yes.
And do you believe, as they were pre-European contact, as they are now, that they are an accepted part of the community?
Yes.
So why would you think that in these independent nations that are operated by indigenous people, which is consistent with what, 92% of the nations of the world, why do we continue to believe that the union between a man and a woman and its connection from generations past into generations going forward is so important? Even though we have the largest per capita population of gay people in the world, why do these nations continue to recognize the union between a man and a woman?
Because it's part of our culture, it's part of our tradition, it's been passed on from generation to generation.
So when Christianity came with the concept of marriage, of a union between one man and one woman, was that foreign to Hawaiians? Was that foreign to Samoans? Was that foreign to native peoples of the Pacific?
I believe not.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions for this testifier who has taken a really long time? Okay, Representative Lee, followed by Representative Thielen.
Thank you very much for sticking around for so many questions.
I guess that's the risk for testifying.
Yeah.
Okay,
You know, I don't believe fundamentally that the core of this debate right now is about race so much as what's happening in our community and what's in the bill and how it's going to affect us all. But it's important, since it's been brought up, going back historically. I did want to ask, do you have an idea of whether or not any of the previous Hawaiian monarchs had one wife, many wives here in Hawaii?
Yeah, they actually did have multiple, but they changed as soon as they gave themselves to the Lord.
Once there was Western contact brought in from...
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Thielen.
I'm going to let you off the hook, sir. If the teacher is still
wait,
here...
Representative Thielen. hold
Madam
on.
Chair, I believe I had the floor.
Yeah, no, I was going to get to
Okay,
you.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, so any other questions for this gentleman who has been very patient? Thank you very much.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
Madam Chair.
you're not off the hook.
Okay. Good morning, Pastor Kapihe. Thank you for being here.
Morning.
And thank you for your testimony. I want to go back to something that you touched upon. 2 days ago, the Attorney General made clear that this public accommodation, that the religious exemptions only applies to solemnization, which is, I now pronounce you
Yes.
husband and wife. And then, or wife and wife, or husband and husband. And then we also had the Civil Rights Commissioner, Bill Hoshijo, acknowledge that a public accommodation, the litmus test is if you're available to the public. And because now this bill is silent, yesterday we had Judge Ahu say it's out there. It's a factor.
Yep.
Because it's silent in this bill. So people think, oh, we're not dealing with public accommodations, and yet Executive Director Hoshijo made clear that so long as you hold yourself out to the public, there will be a test. Okay, so you just said in your verbal testimony that as a church, you folks hold yourself out to the public. So in the event this bill were to pass, would your church at the very least be okay with an express carve-out, an explicit exemption from the public accommodations to ensure that no matter what you folks do, because again, we already know the exemption only deals with solemnization. So now I think the issue right now is public accommodation. And I can't speak to your church, but I know the majority of churches in my district hold themselves out to the public. So I guess that really seems to be the issue for you. Like,
high schools into the community, and so I used to coach. I do help out with the students, and at Castle High School. So whatever they need, we use our church facility to feed the homeless. Other churches that need a place, they're more than welcome to use our facility.
so in the event, if this bill were to go forward, would your church want an explicit exemption from that public accommodations to ensure ensure that you folks were protected?
Yes, it would have to be
Okay,
there.
thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Pastor.
any other questions from this gentleman? Oh, you still have questions for this person? Okay. Oh, Representative Morikawa?
Thank you. Through this discussion, it just occurred to me, does your church have a specific fee or rate that you charge for profit, or is it all donation?
All donations, no
So
specific price.
If it's all donation, then you would not fall under the accommodations law, right? Because it's specific if you allow the public to use your facility for profit. So I think the public accommodations law and this specifically says for profit.
Yeah, so we don't have any set price on using the facility.
Right, it's all donations, so I wouldn't see that you would fall under that part of that law.
But
Or you would be exempt because you are not making a profit off of use of your facility.
But people still give, so.
Yes, as long as it's a donation, it doesn't show that you are making profit off of that usage. So I think that's where we need to clarify profit or non-profit or donations.
But at the same time, that's just our church. There are other churches out there that do require
Yes, and
fees.
those churches that do have a fee structure or do document receiving money for use of facility would fall under that for-profit definition, I believe.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions for this testifier? Otherwise, I'm going to go back to Representative Ward. I think he has a question for Mr. Okino.
Thank you,
who's
Chair.
been
Before I
standing
ask that
patiently.
question, I wanted to ask to have 3522, the young nursing student, to raise her hand.
Do you?
Is she here? Okay, I just wanted you to raise your hand because I want to thank you for the flashback you gave me as a freshman when you said evidence-based
Representative
practices.
Ward,
I'm waiting for
yeah,
my person to come
he's
up.
He's
Because-
right there. He's been standing there for a long time.
Allow me a second to thank this lady to remind us and confess that we don't do enough evidence-based practice in anything that we do, not just this bill, but it's the greatest disappointment I had as a freshman. You gave me a flashback.
Representative
I
Ward,
wanted to
this
thank
is the
you.
time for
Thank you,
questions.
madam. I just
Go
gave
ahead.
my testimony about being a freshman and naive about we do things with evidence.
Representative Ward, there's a lot
Yes,
of people
madam.
still waiting.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Mr.
I want to
Okino.
make sure that this gentleman who's known as being radioactive and giving lots of things that are said, that he is evidence-based, because I want to know what the study is that he made about there is a difference. And this is for everybody to know that if there's a difference, we got to have solid data.
Okay, is there
Have
a
you got solid
question?
data? Yes. What is the study you talked about, Professor Regneris? That there was a difference growing up in a homosexual family versus not so. What is the difference?
I guess
and what's the evidence?
the first study that I referred to was the study by the American Psychological Association that Dr. Mulvaney referred to last night. And it's the study that the gay advocates always refer to say that there is no difference in the outcomes between same-sex children raised in same-sex families as compared to children raised in heterosexual families. And I read an article by Professor Lauren Marks from Louisiana State University, and he checked the validity of this study. Dr. Mulvaney said that the study was made valid because of the preponderance of studies that they used to validate their conclusions. And the study does refer to 59 studies that made up their conclusions. Professor Lauren Marks looked at this and said that statistically and scientifically, the report is invalid because, number one, it used what he meant was convenient samples, or that these were selected interviewees. For example, to determine the impacts on the children, they asked the parent of the child, while the child was growing up in the family, whether that child was well adjusted or not. Whereas the new study by Dr. Regneris, which I'm going to talk about further, interviewed these children after they left the household as young adults. Okay? On the heterosexual side, this APA study selected a group of divorced single parents rather than biologically intact parents made up of a man and a woman, a husband and a wife. So in that sense, that study is invalid. Okay, their conclusion was that the study proves that there is no differences. Okay? So Dr. Mark Regnerus, a couple of years ago, to come up with the right conclusions, did a study with the biggest sample size, random sample size ever done. Okay? They chose, like I said, they chose for the children's side. They interviewed the child after he had grown up and left the household. Okay? And they interviewed on the heterosexual side families made up of a traditional family of a biological father and a mother. And the differences were stunning. They were stunning. Okay? For example, whereas the APA study said that there is no significant difference, the Regnerus study found out that there were very significant differences in 25 of the 40 outcomes that they studied. Again, some of these outcomes include, how these children have grown up. I mean, how have this lifestyle impacted them? And some of the outcomes that were significantly different with the same-sex child scored very low were areas such as receiving welfare, the need for therapy, infidelity, sexually transmitted infections, sexual victimization, educational attainment, safety of the family of origin, depression, attachments and dependencies, marijuana use, frequency of smoking, thoughts of suicide, relational quality, and criminal behavior. So looking at these two studies, it's very clear that children need both a mother and father. It's very clear. I know you've been given this claim that there is no difference, but I just wanted to clarify for all of you that there is a highly credible study that looked at both sides and showed clearly that there is a very significant difference. So I didn't want to just point out what's happening to our regular children, like in Massachusetts or whatever, but also the children on the same-sex marriage side of it. And that's why I brought that up.
Thank you, Mr. Aquino. Even though the laws are so new, so are the studies. I think this needs to be pursued further. But thank you for your testimony.
Thank
you, Chair.
Representative Tokioka.
I'm sorry, Gary, not for you.
Thank you, Mr. Okito.
Anybody else for him, Chair? Or my turn?
No, I don't think anybody else has questions for Mr. Okito.
Okay. I have a question for Mr. Law, Alvin Law. Thank you very much. And thank you for your passion in your testimony. And I'm sure it's not easy. Have you ever testified at the state capitol before?
No.
Okay.
No, have not.
So thank you very much for that. And part of your response to Representative Suji, his questioning, made me think about, why we're here and the great testimony that we're getting from both sides. But what you had said, and I want you to make sure that I'm clear on what you said, is that
I think the way that it's covered right now, it covers all the things that it should be. If an institution's open to dealing business with the public, then that should fall under all the public accordance acts and whatnot.
Okay.
You can't choose to take money from one group and not another. Right?
Okay.
It's open.
if my little brother can get married at that church or whatnot, I would like the opportunity to choose whether or not I want to.
Yeah, so we had a lot of legal minds that came, and they had differing opinions on it. And one of the most profound comments that was made was from Justice Ahu, when he said, you know, you want to make sure that we create predictability. And that's where the question goes back and forth, because, you know, Mr. Kileali'i yesterday, he's on the other side of the issue. He was very passionate about it. And I think for us, you know, we want to focus on what we need to do to make this right. And I know that the chairs, Chair Luke and Chair Rhodes, you know, I'm almost certain that we're not going to pass. Well, I don't want to speak for them, but I didn't support SB1, and I know that we're going to look at all of these amendments, but we want to make sure that it is predictable. So that's the problem that we're dealing with. So, you know, in House Bill 6, there's some language there. I know there are other things from the Connecticut law that are in there. Have you seen those, the House Bill 6 or the Connecticut law?
No, I've not. I haven't had time to read through all the bills and all the laws that passed, so I've been pretty busy. So
okay, no, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just, you know, we're going to have to make a decision soon, and so the testimony that has come here has been great from both sides, and I don't see, you know, we don't appreciate when people are bashing one side or the other, but we just want to make sure that what we come out at the end is pono, and so, you know, the testimony that you gave and the passion that people bring, it's incredible. You know, Rep. Cullen and I are walking around outside and people are practicing their testimony. But if you can look at some of those things, then, you know, I know the chairs have, and, you know, who knows what the amendments are going to be. But thank you for being here, and thank you for being bold enough to make your testimony. Mr. Law, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I have a question to Mr. Law, if I may. Mr. Law, thank you for being a farmer. We don't have enough in this place. And I sit on the Ag Committee. We're trying to encourage people as yourself. But you said being a farmer is tough, but then you said being a gay farmer is even tougher. Could you explain what you meant by that?
Right. I mean, right. I deal with a lot of minority issues, you know, as being gay. So I mean, I can't get married to the person that I love. So I don't know, like, what else you have to go through.
So it's not an ag-based, because I think there's already laws that keep you out of discrimination as a farmer, and if it was based upon your farming as a gay versus...
Actually, I don't know if the Hawaii Farm Bureau changed their definition yet, because I think in their Farm Bureau constitution or whatnot, it says that, you know, a farming family is between a man and a woman as well. So I'm not sure if I'm even protected under that.
Okay. What is the crop you grow, by the way?
We export basil. We also grow Japanese cucumbers, eggplants, taro leaves, taro stem, and a bunch of other smaller herbs for export.
Thank you. Wish you the best to prosper in that one. It's a tough one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Representative Thielen.
Thank you. If the teacher could come back up, if the teacher is the teacher still here? Thank you. Yes. You're the one that also coaches a debate team. Okay, great. I'm sorry, I did not get your name that clearly. It was
Laura Burbidge.
Okay. Could you state again your understanding of the constitutional amendment?
Exactly what it says, that the legislature shall have the power to reserve marriage to opposite sex couples.
And your interpretation of what that means, that you are explaining to the students?
If we wanted to break it down grammatically, that your subject would be the legislature. And what do they have the power? What do? They shall have the power. And your direct object would be to do what? To reserve marriage for whom? To opposite sex couples. So to me, it's just pretty clear.
All right. So Justice Levinson was what this did was unequivocally give the power to the legislature to define marriage, and not just to make marriage between opposite sex couples.
But then it says to reserve marriage to opposite sex couples.
Right, but within that power, the constitutional amendment, and this was according to Justice Levinson, within that power, we have the power to define marriage. And it's not just...
Okay, again, if
So the
you're going to be
intent-
disruptive,
If I
then
can go back to the intent of the
there's a
whole
lot of people
vote
out
back.
there who are willing to sit in your seat. So please give respect for the testifier and the questioner. So please go ahead. Sorry that I interrupted you.
So I have the information sheet that was given to us as the electorate about that question. The explanation of the proposed amendment was the proposed amendment is intended to make it absolutely clear that the state constitution gives the legislature the power and authority to reserve marriage to opposite sex couples, meaning of a yes vote. A yes vote would add a new provision to the Constitution that would give the legislature the power to reserve marriage to opposite sex couples only. The legislature could then pass a law that would limit marriage to a man and a woman, overturning the recent Supreme Court decision regarding same-sex couples. That was clearly the information that we got back in 1998 to vote on that issue. So even with my debate students, if they were to bring this up and try to maneuver around that definition of the power that the legislature has to define marriage, it's clear. It's a grammatically correct sentence that tells us to whom, to opposite sex
I
couples.
wish you had been here yesterday during the period of time that Justice Levinson was explaining that it gives us the power and authority which we do not need to use to define marriages between a man and a woman.
Then
And
that
then
means-
let me just finish, if I may, and I'll finish up with that. I'm trying to figure out how it's best to clear this up in a better way. And the reason I'm concerned about it is that you're teaching students. And that's what makes it more important that we make sure that the legal understanding is correct. And I'm a bit at a loss as to how to do that now with Justice Levinson not here in the building. And possibly, if you know how to reach us all by email, or phone call, if you could do that, because I would like to get you back the information that we were given.
Actually, I did hear
And if you could
Justice
do that
Levinson.
afterward, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other
Thank you.
questions? Representative Fale? For this person? For this testifier? Representative Fale, for this testifier?
Thank you, Chair. What grade do you teach, ma'am?
High school.
High school. All different grades in high school?
Homeschooled high school students, so
Homeschool high
9th through 12th.
Okay. Could you quickly construct for me a sentence that would be grammatically correct for, let's say, the 1 million, we're trying to communicate with 1 million people. And obviously the legislature back in 1998 did not possess the capacity to construct a sentence to communicate to 1 million people that they were just giving the legislature the power to define marriage. Could you very quickly give me a sentence that it wouldn't take a Supreme Court justice to understand what it meant? Could you quickly construct a sentence to convey to your average person out there who's just living their lives, doing their jobs, that would say you are giving this sentence, this constitutional amendment gives the power to the legislature to define marriage however they want? Could you construct me a sentence real quick to that effect?
The legislature shall have the legislature will reserve marriage to one man and one woman.
No, I'm saying to define marriage any way they want. Would that have been a clearer message on exactly what they were,
On what's happening now.
on what's happening now?
Yeah.
Would,
Yeah.
would the people of Hawaii understand if we said the legislature shall have the power to define marriage however they want? Would that be a grammatically correct sentence that would convey that you are turning all power over to the legislature to define marriage as they wish?
Correct.
Would that be more effective than what was given to the people on that day, that apparently 1 million regular voters did not understand, but only a chief justice of the state Supreme Court would understand?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, any other questions for this person? And if I can remind the members, a lot of these folks who are testifying are lay people. They're not experts, and they're not holding themselves out as experts. So, if you could kind of be lenient in some of the questions, because these people are just citizens coming to testify, and they're not, holding themselves out as experts in one section or another. So with that, Representative Lee.
Thank you very much. And I just want to follow up on Representative Thielen's question about, and Representative Fale's question about the amendment. I wanted to ask, before 1998, before that constitutional amendment, did the legislature have the power to define marriage?
Not that I know of.
So I guess my question is, how did that end up in our law in the first place?
I don't know. I don't have that history.
So it was in our...
You mean, how did the constitutional amendment get there?
Before the constitutional amendment, how did the state define marriage?
I don't know. I don't have that background.
You're not aware if that was in our law or not at the time?
No. I mean, I'm sure it was inferred that it was between a man and a woman. Historically, that's how it's been since the beginning of time.
I guess I bring this up because, I mean, for the purposes of defining marriage from the state prior to 1998, we still had taxes and benefits and all sorts of things that were applicable to married couples. And my reading of the law even before then, and I'm not an attorney, but it's there saying that there is a definition of marriage which the state provided, which was put into law prior to that. So after the amendment was passed, before the amendment was passed, the legislature had entered into that place, and there was no guidance from the Constitution saying it shall be X, Y, or Z, which the amendment subsequently in 1998 spoke to. So in 98, with the question being, shall the Constitution of the State of Hawaii be amended to specify that the legislature shall have the power to reserve marriage to opposite-sex couples, for the first time constitutionally, it's my understanding, began to speak to that. And so the legislature, while it had the power before to define marriage in statute, with this being now in the Constitution, did not only reserve that right to man and woman, because as I read it, there is no only in there. So it's not usurping the power of the legislature, which it had before, rather saying that it clearly and unequivocally has the power, should it choose to, define marriage as between only a man and a woman. Anyway, sorry, that was off on a tangent. Thank you.
Okay,
Chair.
Representative Onishi.
Yes, if I could have Mr. Aquino come back.
Oh, wait, hold on. I think Representative Kalkami also had a question before we bring Mr. Aquino back.
Speaker, though, Chair. I
Yeah,
was
different.
gonna...
So I think this person is done. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Van. Sorry, Van, but I'm looking for an opinion from a layperson and a citizen. On your testimony, if it's okay, can I quote from your testimony?
Yes.
All right. It says, I believe that the bill has more than adequate protections for the religious groups in Hawaii. And basically it says that you don't feel that the bill needs any amending. Okay. Now we're trying to find some common ground on this issue, and I'm going to quote and ask you a question, but according to a law professor, distinguished professor of law and religious studies from the University of Virginia, it is in his opinion that marriage is both a legal relationship and a religious relationship. The challenge for any bill is to equalize civil marriage while preserving religious control over religious marriage. question is to you is, if we were to amend the language to provide much more protections for religious organizations, would you have a problem with that?
I don't think an amendment is necessary because the bill already gives the constitutional protections of the United States and Hawaii's constitution to everyone. I think that covers broadly every aspect of freedoms of religion, and I don't think it has to be amended.
But I think your main goal is to be allowed the opportunity to marry. And there is another goal for other people in the spirit of compromise, for them to be able to practice their religion freely and openly without the fear of being sued or persecuted against by, I guess, a small minority of what you could say would be troublemakers. So I'm going to ask again, if we were to amend it to provide more protections for churches, could you still support it? It still gives you, I think, what you're looking for.
I think that protections for the churches is good if they're not for profit. In my spoken testimony, I spoke that Jesus was very angry about churches that are for profit.
That's kind of tangential to his question. I
Yeah.
think at this point in time, you have to just agree to disagree.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Onishi for another testifier.
Yes, if Mr. Okino is still here, if he could please come up.
I think we
Chair,
have lost
if I could
him.
just reserve, if he's available, if he comes back. then
I'd
if I
rather
could ask
not,
him.
because once we're done with this group, I would like to excuse them, and then you can ask him on the side. Okay, any other questions
thank you.
for the group of people? Representative Fukumoto.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Miss Burbage, I think it was. Are you still here? No? Okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Har.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is 3477 Kristen Nagamine still here? Okay, if not, 3435 Noreen Mashida. Okay, if we could, Madam Chair, as each group comes up, if we could please remind them, I understand that they may have places to go, but to the extent if they could stay, we would request that they stay. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Actually, the staff has been telling them to, but sometimes they have to leave. Okay, thanks. Can we move on to the next group that has been patiently waiting? Please state your name.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Shumway, number 3508. I am other than time on the mainland for grad school and serving a volunteer mission for my church, I'm a lifelong resident of this beautiful island state. I'm also a lay leader in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, responsible for about 3,600 members, and I stand in strong opposition of SB1. We are at a historic time in Hawaii, but the reason I think it's historic is not because we're on the verge of passing this bill, but it's because of what you see here and outside and on the streets. It's been made abundantly clear, and as you've seen, as you've been driving around, that this is the one issue that has brought out the most comment of anything that we have seen before. And so as you sit there, I think for those of you who are still thinking that same-sex marriage is a good thing and we should pass this, despite the vast opposition that you're hearing, it can only be, I think, one of two things. One is, well, I don't care what the people think, which I don't think any of you believe. So it must be the other one, that there are some things that, even though the majority feels a certain way, we don't think we should go with them on this bill or on this issue. And I'm not going to speak to that, but I do want to speak to those who are thinking that way, that even if that's what your thought is, SB1 is not the vehicle to get this done. There are way too many well-documented flaws in this bill. As an individual person, as a religious leader, I am concerned about the religious protection provisions that are woefully inadequate. I am concerned about the individual members of our church or the community or any church or no church, but who, for whatever reasons, particularly their religious convictions, do not want to participate in recognizing being part of same-sex union. And so I'd urge you to vote no on this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Representatives. My name is David Amin Jr., and I am number 3437. Thank you again for being here. I know you didn't ask for this, but I am clearly opposed to SB1 and this session. I'm a husband, father, community leader, and a business owner in Mililani. And I want to state clearly that I have no hatred or animosity toward anyone who is gay or lesbian. And I think Americans and Hawaiians are really tired of having the democratic process shortchanged here, as we've seen in our country and here now, with having legislation crammed down our throats in this short session. And basically, it's kind of like what we've been hearing. Well, let's just pass it and find out what's going to be in the bill, or find out how there are going to be a lot of lawsuits and damage to a lot of innocent people. And so I'm just going to make it clear by saying, let me read to you this little poster or flyer. It's called Dereliction of Duty. Dereliction equals the shameful failure of one's failure to fulfill one's obligations, New Oxford American Dictionary. Duty, Hawaii state senators and representatives are elected representatives of the people of Hawaii. And here it lists the 5 who voted to pass this through in the Senate, and it lists also the 15 other senators who have voted for this bill against the majority will of the people. And so let me just use this as a reminder that there's a resolution here for our citizens that say we will be careful to note any other House representatives who vote in support of gay marriage, not because of a hatred, no, but because of the institution of marriage that is foundational to any society that is one man and one woman, and that we will not forget these senators. This is going out now, and it will go out with any also representative. That maybe is the language that you need to hear, because you're not listening to everything else that everyone is saying, or some of you are not. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Next, please.
Good morning, Chair Rhodes, Vice Chairs, and members of the committee. My name is Rachel Lee. I'm 25 years old, and my number is 3,519, and I am a registered voter from Mililani. I stand humbly before you in opposition to SB1. And if you can picture with me a building, and on that building is a foundation, and upon that foundation is a cornerstone. One man and one woman is the cornerstone which our society, our civilization has been built upon. One man and one woman has significance, a purpose, and design for why it has originated that way. And I would carefully remind with utmost respect Representative Ng's references to Deuteronomy and Exodus that property is not the purpose of marriage, but in addressing Genesis, which is the original beginning of this historical document, where it says Ezer Kenegdo, which is a Hebrew term meaning that a woman was created for a helper who would be complementary, equal, facing, and different, which is why men and women bring different strengths and weaknesses in a marriage. And now we are faced with the shaking of a building. The issue at hand is shaking us at the core of a moral system and value system. This issue goes beyond the words you see on paper. One man and one woman not only look to gain benefits for and within themselves, but for benefits of others to come, more specifically their children. The ripple effect of a minority group impacts a vast majority, and unfortunately, the people aren't given this opportunity to vote on the bill. But however, the majority of people have elected you in office in the position you now hold for such a time as this. And we are looking to you because you hold that power to make a decision, an unbiased decision, unbiased mindset and perspective, unbiased agenda, no matter what party you come from. And you hold that to yourselves to fulfill the responsibility, the commitment, and the oath that you swore to serve all of Hawaii's people and the people that you represent. And I urge you to say no to this bill, because to make the proper and best amendments for best people, for the best interests of all groups of Hawaii.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Aloha kako, Ronald Cam, number 3496. Which we can live and truly love one another, and then conclude with an example of this truth and love fleshed out. Philosopher Francis
for once said, for any finite particulars to have any kind of meaning in life, it has to have an infinite reference point. I take that to mean that for us as finite humans to have any kind of meaning, purpose, or responsible code to live by, we need an infinite reference point. God Himself and His Word is that reference point. Now for the example, when Christ walked this earth, His life demonstrated what true love really meant. He loved all who were broken and reached out to the world around Him. When confronted by the religious leaders who by their law wanted to stone a woman caught in adultery, He told her accusers, "He who is without sin cast the first stone." One by one they left. Alone with the woman, He said, "Neither do I condemn you. You are precious in my sight. Though you are an adulteress, I love you." But He went on to say, "Go and sin no more. Leave that behavior of adultery." Jesus loved the sinner, but He hated her sin. He loved the person, but did not condone her behavior. God does not tolerate any behavior that doesn't conform to Himself as the standard. The murderer, the liar, fornicator, thief are all loved by God, but the behavior is not acceptable. Why? Because that is what destroys the person. I humbly ask that we take the time to really think this through rather than making such a quick decision on such a foundational
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Aloha, Chairman Rhodes, and honorable representatives. My name is Shelley Ige, and I'm number 3585. I ran over here on my lunch hour, so excuse me. I chose to be a citizen of the USA. I was made in Taiwan. I had to give up my citizenship in Taiwan for the US. I chose to live in Hawaii. I grew up in Southern Illinois, and that was a good swap. And I chose to be here instead of having fun on Halloween, and I choose to be here during my lunch hour instead of eating. So life is all about choices. And when I tell my children, choose wisely, they might not have much of a choice. The government may make that choice for them unless they are willing to take the bullying, losing their jobs, and other severe consequences in the future. Please let freedom ring. Let me be proud again that I chose the United States as my country. Please wait until the regular session to decide on this contentious bill, SB1. Choose this day what you will do. Will you defend democracy, or you will go against the will of the people? Actually, I'm ultimately a citizen of heaven. Your choice has eternal consequences. Will you stand before God with a correct choice, or will you regret what you will do in these next few days? I know it's really late, and I think, in the process, but I really feel that you will choose to do your duty, and I pray really, truly for your health, your good relationships, for good sleep, and please, I also pray that you'll all hear our hearts and wait just a few more months to decide on SB1. So I just wanted to say a few things. I wish Representative Ng was here, but he had some questions, and I just wanted to say, rend to Caesar what's Caesar, and to God what is God.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good morning, Chair Rhodes and Chair Luke and the rest of the committee. I'm here, and as I sat 9 hours hearing the testimony on Monday.
I'm sorry, could you just tell us your name and number, please?
Oh, my name is Ana Barrientos Perez, 3504. And as I sat here 9 hours hearing the testimony on Mondays, I got the pleasure to hear both sides, and I heard the LGBT testimonies, and it's sad to hear that it's all about equality when their testimony is about two God. It's your choice. So being said that, I've been accused of bigotry, intolerance towards those who hold different opinions. I oppose to this bill. I oppose to drink and driving. I opposed to you teaching children homosexual activity at any level from kindergarten to high school. I was accused of having fear. No, I do not have fear. I am concerned that this is not a democratic process. You show your integrity and commitment for we voted for you and we will vote for you in November again, in 2014. So let the people vote, let the people decide. God is the highest authority. Whether you choose to oppress or deny, He has created you. I'm going to read some statistics from 2002 because the CDC has stopped publishing and keeping public records data because of the anti-discrimination issue. So these statistics are from 2010. HIV is considered an epidemic right now. It's a homosexual lifestyle. If you pass SB1, you will lead our teenagers in high school and all the schools throughout Hawaii to enter into that bill because you're going to provide the literature, you're going to provide the website, you're going to provide everything. So what do they have in the time that are free? They're going to go and try it out. So this is the emergency visits were done in 2010, and 10% was related to HIV because they don't go and test. So it's really, really expensive, and it's in the millions of dollars, $108 million. Age 15 to 64, 63.3 millions. HIV serology, 250T, and these are in the CDC.
Next,
Thank you,
please.
and vote no.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Chairman, and members of the committee. My name is Frederick Harris Jr., and my number is 3520. I humbly stand before you as a pastor at First Assembly of God, a very concerned citizen of this great state, and a retired service member of the United States Navy. In 1998, the people voted for what they believed was a state constitutional amendment that limited the right to marry to heterosexual couples defined as between one man and one woman. I arrived on the island in 1998, and because of my military status, I wasn't able to vote or even have a voice in the process. I've spent 20 years in the United States Navy protecting the very freedoms I am watching this legislative process erode away. Yes, I am diametrically and emphatically opposed to SB1. I didn't have a voice in 1998, and now my voice is being silenced because the governor insisted upon having a special session to decide such a crucial issue and not give it over to a general session. I watched the Senate Judiciary Committee session and was totally appalled at the lack of attention given to hearing and acting upon what the majority of the testimonies conveyed. You've heard many testimonies. You've been inundated with facts, statistics, emotions, and sentiments. There isn't anything new I can share with you, but I do want to leave you with this. Marriage is an institution ordained by God, and no man, government, or institution has the right to redefine it. If any legislative law prevents any group of people, institutions, or the public from exercising their due conscience, which the United States Constitutional First Amendment assures, it does not and should not have merit to be passed. Finally, I appeal to each and every member to do the right thing, make history today by voting no to SB1 and reassuring the people of Hawaii that you can do what the Senate failed to do. Hear the public outcry of the majority of the people and act in the best interest of the people and the state of Hawaii and bring back the true meaning of government, of, by, and for the people.
Next, please.
Let the people decide. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Kristen Imig and I am number 3354. I am adamantly opposed to SB1. I stand before you as a humble citizen, a mother of 3 children, and a proud wife in a traditional marriage. This is an enormous task that you've been given. The decision to redefine marriage is beyond the scope of a single committee or a small group of individuals, regardless of how intelligent I'm sure all of you are. It's not a philosophical quote, but I do like the local bumper sticker that reads, "Slow down, this ain't the mainland." There's a reason why they call it Hawaii time. We're a state known for taking our time for processing decisions, not hurriedly, but carefully and with thoughtful consideration. flaws in this bill. This decision will forever impact education, business, religious freedom, and every facet of life. Governor Abercrombie justified this hasty decision for tax credit purposes. This is such a trivial and foolish reasoning. Altering a pillar of our society is not something to be rushed through in the name of financial breaks. Not to mention, the verbiage in this bill has made us into unisex robots, taking away our unique titles and roles as male and female. We are now being diminished to gender-neutral beings. Instead of being called a woman or a wife, I'm now an individual. And my husband and I are now two parties. We need strong women, we need strong men standing in their position and roles in the family. Men and women, equal but yet different, balanced and yet complementary. Nowadays, there's such a big push for being PC, but is it wise to make decisions based on what the crowd's doing, namely what the mainland or other countries may be doing, without truly understanding the consequences of this bill for our state? There are numerous ways to show respect and consideration to people of all sexual orientations without redefining marriage. What is politically correct is not always morally correct. And funny how we can pick and choose which parts of the Bible we want to uphold. If I remember correctly, everyone's taking a day of rest tomorrow, yeah? Lastly, I know that everyone here has a conscience. Please listen to your conscience, and if there's any doubt,
Thank you
vote
very
no on this
much.
bill.
Next, please.
My number is 3561. My name is Eva Kuuipo Kahapea Hubbard. I'm from Nanakuli and Nuuanu, and I strongly oppose SB1 for a couple of reasons. People come from all over the world to Hawaii to experience Hawaii. From all of the continents and the 30,000 oceanic islands, arriving through 15 ports, 23 airports throughout the islands. We have shared our Hawaiian culture and traditions. We have shared our values and ethics and philosophy. We have shared our lives. We have shared our aloha with the world who come to experience Hawaii that cannot be duplicated anywhere else. 74 million visitors come to the islands. 74 million came last year. What will be the statistics of visitors to the islands of Hawaii once this bill gets passed, or if this bill gets passed? What are the statistics of the 14 states that have approved this? Who will want to come to Hawaii then? You are changing my culture. You're changing my philosophy. You're changing my tradition. What kind of culture will we have left to present to those 74 million visitors in an industry of tourism here? My family is affected. This is not pono. Of the only 10% of Hawaiians living here, I do not want to be included on the map of the 14 states. And my second point is, how will this protect my Hawaiian rights? Have we really clearly looked at that? I just want to say mahalo nui loa, ma'oli o ia, and mahalo mahalo mahalo
Thank you very much.
Aloha, my name is Sandra Young. My number is 3521. I want to thank all of you for being fair in the process today, but I ask you to open up your minds and listen to what we have in our letters and consider the destructive effects of same-sex marriage on religious freedom, on parental rights, on children, on freedom of speech, and the foundations of our democracy. I've given some examples throughout the country about the destructive effects of same-sex marriage and the secularization of our values and replacing our traditional values with secular values. I am going to primarily discuss today two issues. I'm a family direct your attention to the bottom of page 7 and page 8. It's really defectively drafted because it seems to allow for quasi-polygamous relationships by allowing people who are in reciprocal beneficiary relationships and in domestic partnerships to be able to get married. So that is something that is easy to correct. You simply add 4 words: reciprocal beneficiaries and domestic partnerships. I also wanted to quickly direct your attention to the parentage provision. I'm troubled by the change in the use of the word, the definition of presumption, because the presumption is assumption of fact accepted by the court to be true, and this is a misuse of that word. And I see my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Aloha. My name is Arthur Hanneman. I'm a father of 7, grandfather of 14.
So could you, we couldn't hear you, but can you speak a little closer to the mic, but can we have your number too, your registration number?
Sure. My name is Arthur Hanneman. My number is 3428.
Thank you.
I'm a father of 7, grandfather of 14, married for 38 years, and I strongly oppose Senate Bill 1. There's been discussion this week regarding church and state. As we talked about it, I was reminded of a story in the Bible regarding the Savior Jesus Christ. He was asked the question, unto whom do we pay tribute to? God or to Caesar? And with that he said, show me a coin. And then he asked the question, whose image is on the coin? And they said, Caesar. And with that he taught, render therefore unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. If we take a piece of paper and we put church on one side at the top, and we put state on the other side, and then we draw a line down the middle, the question would be, in what category would you place marriage? Remember the words of the Savior, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. The other thing we talked about this week was this evolving that's happening in our society. If you look at the 10 Commandments, they've been a part of our society for thousands and hundreds of years. And in this evolving society, which ones would you change and which ones would you take out? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not lie. We talked about baptism this week and comparing baptism and the different ways in which it's performed today, and comparing that to marriage. Though the ordinance or the performance of baptism has changed, the definition still is the same. This week I heard someone say that the government has got to step in because the people can't decide, or they'll say yes. I would hope that the government would not step in, that we would have faith in the people to do the right thing. Let the people decide.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Trish Matthews, and I'm number 3461. Aloha, and thank you for your service to our state and for representing the people of Hawaii. It's been an arduous and exhausting week. Many of us have taken time away from work and stayed in the rain and the cold, and this is my take 4, so I'm very happy you didn't turn us away. Thank you with all deepest sincerity and gratitude. As a resident and voter, I am concerned about this special session. It appears contrary to the democratic process I know, nor does it reflect decision-making in the best interest of the people. It is setting a precedent, a negative one. If we feel rushed, we can only imagine how rushed you feel. I understand that hearings for other issues affecting our community have transpired at the same time this week. If we can barely track the activity of this one, we can reasonably deduce that we, the people, nor our legislators, have been afforded the opportunity to appropriately attend to these issues in 5 days. It is imperative that experts are consulted on the potential and very plausible adverse consequences to our schools, businesses, churches, and community in general. We must act with due diligence. There are too many unknowns and unpredictability in SB1. Our country was founded on principles and values such as freedom of religion and speech. Please give us a voice and a choice, the right to vote, exercising our inalienable rights. The people are speaking, and I hope our legislators are listening. On a very positive note, this session has prompted momentum. Rather, it served as a catalyst for change. People are engaged. I don't think we'll be the lowest voter turnout in the country of 13% the next time. The process which we were subjected to this week should concern us all, even if this issue is not at the forefront for some. I respectfully ask that the people be allowed to decide. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Aloha, my name is Victor Groves, number 3491, and I am opposed to SB1. Probably, as with some of you, there was a time in my life when I did not believe in God, but through experiences, I've come to know that without a doubt that God is real. My point being that I and other Christians are accountable to a higher court. So I strongly oppose the SB1 because, yes, though the LGBT community will be receiving their federal funding, they constitute less than 1% of Hawaii's population. But a far greater population becomes threatened, namely churches, individuals, and small businesses who cannot be forced by law to violate God's law and condone same-sex practices based on conscience. Exemptions in this bill cannot address every situation which will arise, thus subjecting churches, individuals, and small business to lawsuits for living their consciences out, something that has existed throughout history. Churches, for example, not able to perform adoptions or baptisms for people living contrary to God's law. Individuals or small businesses not offering services for conscience sake will be subjected to actions which can lead to fines, penalties, and possibly imprisonment. So I respectfully ask that you vote against SB1 and let the people decide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, let's pause here. Anybody have any questions for this group of testifiers? Representative McDermott.
Chair, I think they were hiding the mic from me. Can I have Aaron Shumway from LDS come on down? Aaron, thank you for being here. Aaron, I'm not sure you're aware, yesterday we had Judge Levinson testify, very enlightening. And in the discussions with him, he affirmed to my question that there is indeed no constitutional right to same-sex marriage, nor is there any fundamental right to same-sex marriage. Are you familiar with that?
I did not hear his testimony, but I would agree with that.
Okay. I also asked him in the United States Supreme Court decisions recently that were given as one of the reasons for us being here, if the United States Supreme Court enumerated a constitutional right for same-sex marriage for every American citizen, and he said no. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
And Aaron, with the current religious protections in the bill, are you satisfied with those?
Not at all.
Okay. Thank you so very much, Aaron.
Members, any other questions? Representative Jordan.
Sorry, Chair. Sandra Young, 3521. Did she leave?
No, she didn't.
It's my understanding you said you're a family law attorney?
Yes.
And you have read SB1?
Yes.
So I'm trying to glaze through your testimony rather rapidly, your written testimony. Could you go, you didn't have much time when you spoke about sorry.
Okay, thanks. Okay. 572C. Yes, I didn't get a chance to finish what I was going to say about that.
I have some concerns with this portion too. In your opinion, should this be just deleted?
Absolutely, yes. This provision, in my opinion, changes parental rights very drastically, and it creates situations that I don't think you would want to occur. First of all, it's a redefinition of the word presumption. It's a misuse of the word because when two people of the same sex are together, it's an impossibility for them to be able to create a child. So you're using the word presumption, which is an assumed fact to be true that can be rebutted, to something that is impossible. Secondly, this provision brings in the provision that states that there's a presumption that the husband of a wife is the father of the child born to his wife. So now you have in this SB1 saying that the gender of the parties doesn't apply. So it's very confusing and possibly overbroad in that if you don't look at gender, it appears, in my view, to give a wife, for example, rights to claim parentage of the child of husband's girlfriend. And I don't think that's what you intend. It also gives, for example, two married people who are in different relationships, but they both produce a child together. You're giving 4 people legal claims to that child. And the problem with that is I heard the Attorney General yesterday, his response was repeatedly, the courts will decide, the courts will decide. Correct. But that is such a hard question that doesn't deal with the reality of how expensive legal services are. Most of the people that call my office cannot afford legal services. So it's very unfortunate. We have to be sensitive to resolving all of the issues so that the poor are not affected by poorly drafted provisions in SB1. And it's throughout the bill. For example, just even the statutory section, it says 572, but 572 is a reciprocal beneficiary section. The more proper place in which this portion of the bill should be 584-4 under the uniform parentage provision. So things were just very hastily done and should not be hastily done because you're hurting people that cannot afford legal services. It's not only in this area. I mean, I could kind of point out some other things that there are defects in the bill because this was
So
thrown
Representative Jordan,
together.
do you want to go into these other areas or?
Well, first I want to finish with this 572 because
Okay,
there's
go
been
ahead.
a lot of discussion regarding this, especially from the Native Hawaiian community, especially when you're talking about beneficiary rights. And I think I understand what you're saying. So, in your opinion, this should be just deleted, period.
Yes, because there's a Hawaii Supreme Court case known as Blackshear versus Blackshear. And what that case does is it makes any determination by a court of law, for example, a divorce, it makes it final, res judicata. You cannot raise the issue again. Now, this is done even even between a husband and wife, where the presumption of paternity applies. The actual father, the real father, has no right to notice of his rights being terminated. And that is because the legislature and the Supreme Court made the decision because of the interests of the child, and the child has opposite sex parents to be able to raise that child. And so there's no deprivation of one parent. So when people are not aware of these proceedings, it's a very, very significant loss. If they're not aware that their child will be taken away, what you would need to do, and again, I don't support SB1 because
I
of the
understand that.
problems that I see, but I'm just pointing out the troubling provisions. You would have to do a separate bill and possibly put it under the uniform parentage provisions because it talks about the establishment of parental child rights there. And you alluded to the Native Hawaiian rights, and there's really, that I'm aware of, no mechanism to protect the Native Hawaiian rights if they're not a party to the marriage. So the reality is family court is very careful in putting in the Native Hawaiian rights onto the birth certificate. When there's an adoption proceeding, we have to file a special extra motion, and the courts look at the records. We have to provide actual evidence of the lineage of the child. But when you do this, there's a potential for that significant right not to be there. And the Native Hawaiians may want to consider some type of registry like the Native Indians, Native American Indians, so that they can keep track of that, ensure that their rights and that are protected.
Okay. Thank you on that portion. Chair, may I ask her on her the other that she spoke about in her testimony?
Can I just open it up to other people? I'll come back to you.
Sure, Chair.
Okay.
No problem.
Anyone else? Vice Chair Har, followed by Representative Fala, and then back to Rep. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr.
And then
Chairman.
over to Rep.
Good
Ward.
afternoon, Ms. Young. Thank you for being here. I'm sorry, you are a family law attorney.
Yes.
How many years have you been in practice?
25 years.
Okay. So would you be able to attest, you did indicate that you have read Senate Bill 1?
Yes, I
Okay.
have.
Could you please turn to page 14 of the bill? This is the section that deals with annulment, divorce,
yes,
and separation proceedings. I think you didn't touch upon this in your verbal testimony, but I'm trying to understand because I too have issues with this regarding jurisdiction. Could you please expand for the members on this on these two committees who may not be attorneys, so we need to speak lay terms, but could you please explain what some of the potential problems are with the section as drafted?
I find this provision disturbing because it's unfair to opposite-sex couples. They don't have a right to get a divorce without jurisdictional requirements. And it's not only putting a burden on our Hawaii family courts because the courts are already backlogged. They need more judges. They need more clerks. So you're burdening the system at the expense of Hawaii taxpayers.
I'm sorry, why are we burdening the system on the back? Why are we burdening on the back of taxpayers? Can you explain that?
Right now, there's a backlog of cases. You can't get into court quickly if you file a post-divorce motion. If you're trying to get an adoption, it takes many months because there's a shortage of staff and judges to be able to process that. And so you're burdening the system because people will have to wait further and longer to be able to have their cases heard before the court.
Okay, Ms. Young, take a step back because I'm not. What is the current law right now? If a couple wants to get a divorce, what is the current? Do they have to be domiciled? Because currently under this bill, there's no domicile requirements for a same-sex couple. What is it currently for a heterosexual couple?
Currently, there's a 6-month residency requirement and a 3-month circuit requirement.
For one party, or for both parties?
For one party to be able to do that.
Okay, so when I read this particular measure, it says neither party needs to have domicile in the state of Hawaii in order to obtain a divorce proceeding.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the first thing. Now, secondly, the Attorney General did testify on this, and he said, well, the reason the section is in there is because we're going to presume, there's a presumption that the reason they're coming back to Hawaii to get a divorce, the same-sex couple, is because they cannot obtain a divorce in their current jurisdiction because same-sex marriage is prohibited. So how do you respond to that?
Well, Hawaii is very unique. We're the wedding capital of the world. We're going to be transformed into the gay capital of the world. But I think it's unfair to have with very favorable provisions in the parentage bill to a same-sex couple, and it involves significant loss of rights. So you apply this parentage provision to this. If two same-sex partners consent to having their custody issue resolved here in Hawaii, and that other natural parent who's not a party to the marriage will not be entitled to notice, it's a significant loss of rights for that person. Also, as far as the jurisdictional requirements under the Uniform Child Custody Enforcement Act, there's a 6-month residency requirement for the court to take jurisdiction in such a case. And so you're changing that uniform law that most of the states have and just applying it here. And it's very difficult for the courts here to resolve a custody case long distance, and usually the judges confer with each other in making that determination to decide which state is the more appropriate jurisdiction.
Okay, is that
Okay,
an adequate answer?
no, actually, no, I'm not
Okay.
finished. Chairman, I'm not.
Then
Ms. Young, can I
Mr.
just
Carney
finish?
to go to someone else?
Yep. Can I just, no, this is on this
Okay,
section.
finish, and let's go.
So, Ms. Young, I just want to understand something. Are you saying, though, that this bill, if passed as is, would give preferential treatment to same-sex couples in divorce proceedings?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I've forgotten who else. Representative Fale, I think, was on the list.
My question got answered, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Ward.
You have read SB1.
Yes, I have.
Have you read HB6 with all of its exemptions?
HB6, no, I have not.
You have not. Okay, I would encourage you to read that one. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next to Representative Bellotti.
Thank you, there's nothing in this section. There's nothing in this section on pages 14 to 15 about the divorce, annulment, separation proceedings that says that the same-sex couple somehow jumps in front of any other previously filed cases. Is there?
Pardon me?
You stated that there's a preference given, but there's nothing in this section or anywhere in this chapter that says somehow that if a couple wants to get a divorce here, that they somehow jump in front of the other filed cases. Is there?
I did not say that they jump in front of other filed divorce cases. This gives an opportunity to same-sex couples to forum shop, to go to the best state that can adjudicate their issues, including the termination of a third party's parental rights. And I think you should seriously consider that. It's this parentage provision.
Excuse me, but forum shopping is prevented in this particular section. I'm referring specifically to the annulment, divorce, or separation section because this only applies to if the marriage was solemnized here. So the forum is here. They married here. And if they happen to move to someplace that doesn't recognize their marriage, then they are then allowed to dissolve their relationship here. But nothing in this section says that they somehow get some kind of preferential treatment. They just are able to, because they avail themselves of the marriage in this forum, they have the ability to then dissolve the relationship for whatever unfortunate reason may have occurred in that relationship. Correct? Yes or no?
Well, it's a little more than that. It's a little more than that.
Thank you. I think I have my answer.
Okay, thank you. I think Representative Jordan still had a question.
Yes, Chair. Wow. I think, Sandra, thank you for coming today. I totally forgot about the Uniform Child Custody Act, and I think we just adopted that, right? The six months.
Yes.
In the last
There's
few
a
years.
6 months residency requirement. Yes.
Yeah. I understand that you do not support SB1.
Correct.
So you do not support SB1 because of these faults in this measure?
I don't support this bill because of the consequences of same-sex marriage. Okay. And I've elaborated that a little more in my letter.
Okay.
And I think, though, the legislature should explore the possibility of other options because there's this divisiveness here, and race and gender are morally neutral as characteristics, whereas issue, you pass a law that is morally neutral, that includes family members, to be able to get the federal benefits, so that everyone truly gets the first, all the federal benefits, and not just same-sex couples, because of the tremendous adverse effects on our society.
Okay. Have you? I didn't get through your whole written testimony. Did you have an opinion on the religious exemptions in here?
I think, you know, in looking at what's happened around the country, I think it's wholly inadequate. It doesn't give rights of conscience protection. There's so many things. If you just look in other jurisdictions where it's passed, you see an erosion of religious liberty. You see a persecution, increased persecution of Christians, and an intolerance toward Christians. Just complaints and lawsuits being filed against Christians for trying to exercise their freedom of their religion, and they're paying fines, and so forth.
So in your opinion, should we be more definite in carving out a religious exemption in this measure, and probably looking at the Religious Freedom Restoration Act?
Well, you know, no matter what you do, because you have same-sex marriage by itself, without including family members and these other groups that are traditionally denied marital benefits, it's not a morally neutral bill, so people of faith are going to object to it. But if you take the time and craft a bill that is morally neutral and inclusive of all other groups that were previously, you know, presently denied marital benefits, then I think the divisiveness that you see, the attacks on Christians, I think people would start working together, because I think we're fair-minded people, but we don't think it's adequate. It's still going to occur, bottom line.
Thank you very much for coming today. I appreciate it, and I think the rest of our members here do too.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Representative Carroll, sorry, I can't see down there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Susan, for coming. I'm just going to jump on what Representative Jordan just asked you, and it's in regards to what you said, that this bill is not a morally neutral bill, and you talked about marital benefits. If you can, in a summary, give me an example of what you mean by morally neutral.
Well, if you look at race is a morally neutral characteristic. You can't say that's wrong. A person's gender is morally neutral. But when people engage a certain type of conduct, some people may be okay with it, the other people may feel it's wrong. So it's considered morally controversial. And people of faith may feel it's wrong. And so how do you balance the two? We ask the legislators to create a bill to give everyone federal benefits, that it be drafted so that it's morally neutral, so that it represents a benefit for all.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Let me, Representative Lee first, then we'll go back to Representative Fale.
Thank you very much. Just very briefly following up on Representative Carroll's question, I think history shows very clearly that morality and religion were used extensively by some at the time to oppose interracial marriage, racial equality, even ending slavery. And they were incredibly controversial issues of their day at the time. Are you suggesting that that debate, in light of this one, should not have happened at the time in the way it did?
Again, the subject of race as a characteristic it's a morally neutral characteristic, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have had it. No one is saying that. And so we should support racial equality.
I think we can all agree that morality is subject to each individual these were moral issues. Questions of race were at the time based in morality.
People can say that, but I think it's a correct decision as to what has occurred and the changes in our country.
So let me follow up. Were the people making those arguments based on their religious values or morality as they saw it at the time wrong?
Well, I can't say what the circumstances were. It's part of their culture at that particular time. To us, it's reprehensible today, but you're trying to compare morally controversial behavior today, and we all have a right to participate in this process, and it's a question on which moral values will prevail between one group and the other group. So we all have a right to voice our opinions, and we should be able to decide this issue.
So what I'm getting at is that morality is a subjective characteristic itself, because I don't, for example, view a same-sex relationship as being inherently immoral, while many others do.
Yes.
At the time, though, these same feelings were made about characteristics such as race and others. And the question I have is whether today this same debate is ongoing, and whether 20 years down the road we may look back just the same as we look back 20 years ago at questions of race and say we were at the time wrong.
Well, we're talking, again, like I said, race is a neutral characteristic.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I think Representative Fale.
Mr. Chair, I have questions for a different testifier.
Hang on just a second. Representative McDermott, you already gone once. Representative Hashem, go ahead.
I got a question for you. Okay, I like your idea of morally neutral. What part of the bill can we change to make it morally neutral? Can you give us language for that?
Well, I think it's a little more complicated than that, because I would like to, if we're going to create a task force or some sort where everyone previously denied marital benefits can be included in.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think Vice Chair Har, I think, is next.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Young, you are familiar with the U.S. Supreme Court's holding in the Williams case regarding divorce decrees being recognized in other states and jurisdictions?
I'm aware of the concept. I haven't read that case.
Okay. To the best of my recollection, the U.S. Supreme Court opined that that one state does not have to recognize the divorce decrees from another state if there is no domicile requirement. So this bill would, in fact, create major problems for us at the end of the day, and it would threaten any other state as well.
I think there are basic constitutional questions as to nexus and meeting basic residency requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Young.
So I'm sorry, Representative McDermott, is this for the same witness or?
Same witness.
Same testifier?
Same witness.
Okay, go ahead.
Sandra, you're a family court attorney, but this morning you've become the czar of morals. So welcome, and you've got a new title. Sandra, if I was to stand here and lie to you, or if I was a drunkard, would that be immoral?
Well, lying is not, is immoral, definitely.
Well, says who? Says you? Says me? Says society? Who says that?
That's a basic fundamental moral truth.
There is such a thing?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Sandra, are you aware that in history, Alexander the Great, the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, in fact, the movie The 300, the Spartans, they all practiced homosexuality as the custom of the day, correct?
It was prevalent in various cultures.
But somewhere along the line, are you aware that the society said, hey, this isn't a good thing? And now we're back at it again, aren't we?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Representative Fale, you were a different testifier? Okay, I have a quick question. It's a serious question, although it may sound flippant. It's always struck me that for someone who's opposed to same-sex marriage, that you would want same-sex couples to be able to divorce as easily as possible.
in the dissolution of that relationship. So you want to be sure you comply with due process, constitutional requirements of notice, and considering property division being fair, and all of that. And sometimes in a marital relationship, one spouse will actually go in and take everything and leave the other person penniless, and it makes it even harder to defend the case here.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Yes, Representative Nish, I'm sorry, same witness? I mean, testifier? Go ahead. I feel like witnesses. I mean, they're witnesses testify too, so, you know.
Can you tell he's a lawyer? You just, I guess, your answer to Rep. McDermott's question in regards to different civilizations or different cultures, that homosexuality was a part of it, and in some cases significant, others not as significant. So at what point did the immorality be attributed to homosexuality, and how did that come about, if you know?
I'm not sure if you want to go into that question, but for example, if you look at different cultures and different scriptural documents or religious documents, it specifically forbids that kind of conduct, with all due respect to people, because it can be destructive not only to the physical body but to the spiritual body. And the concern is not just denying gays their rights, but it's the protection of children. It's love and concern for the gay community. And I say that they've been a blessing in my life during various times.
Okay, yeah, I understand that, but in terms of at some point in time, somebody made a decision that says, hey, this act is no longer moral, and therefore we should not condone it. We should restrict it. We should persecute it. And where did that come from if cultures had acceptance of that before? And how was that propagated, to other cultures, that thought?
Well, I think if you're asking about the Christian faith, it's right in the scriptures, and you have the LDS Church, they have their scriptures that came down from the people that believe in God. They believe it's the Word of God, it's inspired of God. So it came from that source. They believe it's morally wrong, and just considering the biological effects of engaging in that, it is harmful.
So it's a religious belief, not a moral, it's not moral like sex, whether you're male or female, or whether you're of different races. It's not in that same category, right? It was created.
Well, part of it is religious, but if you're going to say this is a religious belief and we don't want that, you're saying, okay, we'll choose the secular view. It's more acceptable to us, and we're not going to consider religious views and all these other religious views, such as thou shalt not steal, and all of these things that are really basic, fundamental rules that we live by. You're kicking it out because it's religious. I don't think that's fair. I think you should consider all of us, and that's why I encourage all of you to consider drafting a morally neutral bill that gives everyone the benefits. It would virtually eliminate.
Okay, I think we're covering the same ground again. Are you satisfied?
Well, I just wanted to say that you're saying that equating thou shalt not kill, that was because of a religious belief. That's why people in the world accepted thou shalt not kill.
It's in the scriptures that...
I understand it's in the scripture, but it's also in other societies and I mean, people believe that you shouldn't kill each other.
Correct.
Before Christianity.
got?
Can I have Aaron Shumway? I have a question here regarding Section 1 of SB1. Okay. Is it how important is Section 1 of SB1 regarding court interpretation of legislative intent?
It's my understanding that one way that you can look at what a legislature was looking at or thinking about when they passed a certain law is the recitals that are given in the opening sections of any bill.
Can you repeat that real quick? I couldn't hear you.
Sorry. It's my understanding that, say, in a court of law, when you're trying to understand what the legislative intent was of a certain bill, is that one place to look for that one piece of evidence would be the opening sections of a bill that discuss why the bill is being enacted.
And are you pretty familiar with Section 1 of SB1? Have you read it over?
I've read it over.
And what do you find, as an attorney, what do you kind of find anything significant or important about Section 1 of SB1?
Well, my understanding of it is that it's the Supreme Court's Windsor case, which held part of DOMA unconstitutional, the part which says that the federal government doesn't recognize same-sex marriages that are recognized in states that recognize same-sex marriage. That's why we want to give them all the benefits so that they can have that here in Hawaii.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And one. Okay. I have another question for a different testifier.
Okay. Please hurry.
And does.
Oh, I was going to ask Rachel Lee.
Oh, okay. The other question I have for a testifier is Arthur Hanneman. Mr. Hanneman, I'm asking you. You are of Samoan descent.
I am.
Are you familiar of any other Pacific Islands that have legalized same-sex marriage?
I am not.
According to your understanding, the origins of same-sex marriage have come from where? Are you kind of familiar with a little bit of the history of same-sex marriage?
I am not.
As a person of Samoan descent, right? You're probably familiar with the Fa'afine history in the Samoan Islands.
I am.
And your understanding is pre-European contact, they were accepted, they were a part of society.
I believe they still are today.
They still are today. Do you think Christianity or anything had to do with why were there never any marriage ceremonies between members of the same sex in Samoa?
I believe part of the Samoan culture has to do with Jesus Christ and his teachings. The majority of Samoans are Christian, and therefore they follow the Bible.
Okay.
And I would find it very difficult for the Samoans to incorporate this kind of relationship and make it ceremonial or formal in the culture.
Okay. Are you familiar that the same-sex marriage origins came out of Western Europe?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Do you understand that the only nations that are advocating for and have legalized same-sex marriage are former colonies, are either nations in Western Europe or former colonies of Western Europe?
Somewhat.
Okay. Do you believe that the Kingdom of Hawaii would be pursuing same-sex marriage? Well, this is just.
Please get to the point.
Okay. The point is that if indigenous people, if all nations that have indigenous people in control of their government, especially in the Asia Pacific region, do not have an issue with this, would you consider that
Thank you very much. Okay, members, any other questions? All right, seeing none, let's move on to the next witness. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Ng.
I apologize. Miss Rachel Lee, are you still here?
Okay.
All right. No, there's one more. There's one more woman that mentioned my remarks from yesterday. Are you still here?
You made more than one remark yesterday, Representative. So.
No, but two testifiers mentioned my expressly.
Is somebody here to want to answer his question? Okay, seeing none.
All right. There'll be someone else at this
witness. Point. Please, next witness, please. I'll go for a little while now.
My name is Sherry Evans. I represent my husband and I. We are against SB1.
Sorry, can you give us your number too?
Yep. My number is 3463. I'm a wife, a mother, and a resident of Hawaii, and have been for all my life, and I never plan to leave. Excuse me if my voice starts shaking or that I may stumble upon my words. I am not a public speaker and never want to be. No thought in my mind would I ever consider being here before you. Yet, I am here. October 28th, Monday night at around 10:15, watching the news, the newscaster squeezed a quick one-liner between other stories saying SB1 was passed and that all the senators but 2 voted for the bill. I knew the majority of the testimonies heard were against SB1. I was in unbelief. Instantly, I started getting informed. I've only had 2 days to get informed since I've been here, as well as Halloween on Thursday. I should have started earlier, but I didn't. It was only when the people of Hawaii's voices were not heard. Do you represent the people of Hawaii? Isn't this why we are here? How can you see it any different than to let the people vote? I ask you to represent the people, give us a voice, and let the people vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, please.
Shirley Kinoshita, 3533.
Thank you.
Honorable Chairs Rhodes and Luke, Vice Chairs, Committee Members of Judiciary and Finance. My name is Shirley Kinoshita, a voter from Kapolei, opposed to SB1. Ladies and gentlemen, is this absolutely the best bill that you as lawmakers can give to the people of Hawaii? Is it? Civil Liberties Union Act and the couples that have joined into civil unions should have all the federal rights. We are not disagreeing with that. Yet we want to be a traditional marriage state. Are we placed in this position because the federal law defers to state law on marriages and withholds benefits? If civil liberties unions were included in the federal law, wouldn't that solve the benefit issue? Where is our federal delegation on this matter? What has been done? And I haven't heard anything from them. In 1998, 269,617 voters, including myself, passed that amendment for traditional marriage. Senator He says in his report from the Standing Committee on the Senate that it is an equality issue. However, we agree with Senator Sloan that this bill is not about equal rights, it's a privilege. On religious organizations, the Senate Standing Committee admits in its report that 2 revisions made in August and September were so confusing to the churches
terms of getting ready for the next group, this is the last of the 3,400 to 3,600. So if your number is between 3,601 and 3,800, please check in.